All right, before we start, I do want to take a minute just to say to all the men and women that have served in our armed forces, happy Veterans Day. Um, particular thank you to Strat Tolson in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, World War II and Korean War vet. Only one in Pawhuska that's a proud owner of a Virginia Tech flag. He's also my grandfather. 97 years young, still married to my grandmother, living in Pawhuska, and living and dying with the Hokies every single day. But also, many years ago, was ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So, thank you to all the veterans out there. That being said, we have a huge challenge this week, moving to Georgia Tech. Coach Collins has his guys playing extremely hard. You can look at the Virginia film as great evidence of that. A really close ball game that they had a couple opportunities to pull out. They've got skill players, as Georgia Tech has always had, guys that can run as they make the transition from the triple option. James Graham playing at quarterback is continuing, in my opinion, to get more comfortable every single week with what they're asking him to do. He's a former teammate of Lasita Smith, so we're familiar with James. We had him in camp and loved him coming out of high school, so we know what he can do. He can really run and is getting much better in the passing game. Had a big, long touchdown pass early in the game against Virginia. They've had some close losses. I think Coach Collins is doing a fantastic job. Those guys are really playing hard in all three phases. We are 0-3 in the last 3 years against Georgia Tech. They came into our stadium and beat the mess out of us last year. So we've got to have a great week of preparation as we move forward for our next challenge.
You touched on Graham, and I know he was a guy that you guys liked an awful lot. Did you guys didn't necessarily look at him as a quarterback, though, right? Where did you kind of
Yeah, that was kind of our projection, was a skill player, either a wide receiver or defensive back.
What was so appealing about him? Obviously, athleticism and speed and all that. I didn't know if there were some certain elements about him that stood out, though, above anybody else.
Well, he's competitive. I mean, you love those guys that play quarterback in high school. And he may have gone on to be a quarterback. Obviously, he is now, having success. But, he played for a good program, was a good, tough, talented player coming through the high school ranks.
You hired Jerry Kill after the Furman game, and since then you made incremental improvements rushing the ball after that, and in the last 4 games really made a big leap. I guess 220 plus in 3 of the last 4 games. It's not lost on me that comes along with Hendon switching, moving into the quarterback spot, but I guess Brian and Luke and Doug have played even bigger roles since then. But Jerry probably doesn't have some magic pill that made the running game better, but I remember one of the first things you said you wanted him to look at was the running game in particular. And it's not like you have any new personnel in the backfield since then, really, but is there something that he's done that you can put your finger on schematically that you can share with us that he's helped out?
Well, I would say there have been several factors that you alluded to. I mean, we have 2 true freshmen starting on the offensive line that have now played in almost a full season. That's certainly helped. And it's not like the other guys that were playing were old seasoned veterans either. So, we're gaining some experience. Certainly we made a change at quarterback. We haven't done anything really new schematically. I do believe our execution levels increased, our techniques gotten better. You can look at a bunch of different factors for that. Some of it's experience. But it's hard for me I can't overstate, or I shouldn't understate the effect that Coach Kill is having on our program across the board, whether it be the running game or operations or just anything that we've got going on. He's such a valuable resource for us in really all areas. And, continuing to help force the offensive staff to ask questions and to make sure to refine and make sure what we're teaching and how we're teaching it is has been thoroughly vetted, has been one of the many things that he's done for us in his short time here.
Justin, how much different is preparation this week knowing that you don't have to go against the triple option?
Well, it's certainly different. I mean, knowing that it's not on your schedule. I mean, I guess a little bit with the Furman game, but they have a different identity that they're now recruiting to and developing. Bud could probably answer that question better, and that doesn't mean that they can't go run the ball up and down the field. I mean, they know how, those O linemen know how to run block, and they've been recruiting to they've got a quarterback that runs a 4.4. I mean, they've been recruiting to that, so they certainly can run the ball. It just looks a little bit different.
Bud and a couple players after the game referred to the last couple games as after Duke. Kind of an obvious line in the sand of the season. You kind of mentioned it before with small incremental stuff that happened there. Were there big changes you felt like after that game, or was it just sort of continuing to plug away and maybe an attitude change that some guys had around then?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I know it was different for me, just being 100% candid. The meeting we had, I've probably told you guys, you're probably getting tired of me saying it, but, I just put it up there and I told them this is my fault. We are not a tough football team right now. We're not mentally tough. We're not emotionally tough, and we didn't play physically tough. And here's examples of it on the film. And this is not your fault. It's my fault. And I said, and it's changing right now. Like I've let you down, and that's on me. And I encourage everybody to look at the mirror, look at themselves in the mirror when things don't go well. And I'm doing it right now, and I'm telling you, we're changing this. We're going back. I'm going back to being myself. I'm not worried about anything else. If you want to go be a part of it, then I'll see you on the practice field. And the guys have done a great job with it. I don't know how they feel individually. I just, that was my responsibility, and I just told them like it was, and told them we're never going back to that. Doesn't mean we're going to win every game. We're not putting that on the field anymore.
Did you feel like you had gotten away from something?
Yeah, I mean, I know I had. Absolutely. Absolutely.
In terms of like approach, or
Yes, the way that we went about things was different, than what I had always done, and that's my fault. So I quit worrying about all that other stuff and just worried about getting our guys ready to play.
That the pop pass to Wheatley, obviously you don't like the fumble at the end of it, but that's a play where you guys have had large success with it when you've had dual threat quarterbacks. Is that kind of a play you've been kind of saving up for the right opportunity with Hendon in there?
No, it's just it really doesn't matter who the quarterback is for that play. It's all about the defense. So, a couple years ago we ran it quite a bit, and really didn't get those looks much more since then. So, had the look that we needed and almost pulled it off, I guess.
Questions for Coach?
I suppose it's kind of the flip side of things, but you dealt with a big loss like that. Now you kind of have to deal with some success that you guys have had. Is that tough with a team that's obviously still developing a little bit and not a ton of seniors on this team?
Absolutely. We talked about this, that for us, if I've told you guys this before, I apologize, but, for us, the difference between winning and losing is so small. You look at the Coastal Division, you look at the people we've played, the difference is so small. But the difference in how you feel if you win or lose, it's miles apart. So you've got something that there's a very small margin for error in what the results are, but your difference in your feelings are miles apart based on that result. And what we can't do is let our preparation be affected by how we felt after that result. And that's what we talked about the last couple of weeks, and we'll talk about it again. It wasn't that long ago that we had been given up for dead, and we all remember that. And we also understand why or how we've given ourselves a chance to play meaningful games in the month of November, and we have to stick to that. Now, it's very easy to say and very difficult to do, but it's a huge point of emphasis for us moving forward.
What have you seen from Coach Collins in the short amount of time that he's been with that program to make this team, competitive now, despite that huge transition they've gone in from an option team to what they're doing now?
Oh, I mean, I think the first thing is he's got his guys playing hard. I mean, we're however many weeks into the season, and you turn on the game versus their opponent versus Virginia last week, and you know immediately that they're there to go win the game. And I mean, that he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. Those guys are continuing to battle, and they'll be ready to play on Saturday.
You mentioned the young guys on the offensive line earlier. Is there a certain progression that you see with those guys that over your years as a coach that there's going to be some growing pains early and there are benchmarks that they're going to hit along the way? And are you seeing that now, that the improvement there? Sure.
I mean, there's certainly a physical development part of it that for those two young guys in particular, we're not focusing on right now. They're in the middle of playing 70, 80 snaps a game. Most guys their age are in the physical development part of it right now. Also known as, they're redshirting and they're lifting more and that sort of stuff. Those guys are in the they're in the other part of the development, which is the technique and the scheme and seeing the pictures over and over and over again and being able to communicate to the guy next to them. And they've made great strides in that. Brian had to play a whole new position. I mean, you can imagine what that was like for him. So right now it's we're in that segment. When the season's over, they'll go back to the physical part of developing as offensive linemen. But right now they're in the middle of the technique in order to give themselves a chance to have success.
You've a couple times now had to go into programs and sort of implement what you want to do in Memphis here. Can you imagine what it must be like to go from what PJ was doing at Georgia Tech with that personnel to reinventing the wheel, basically? I mean, it just seems I don't even know where you'd start.
Well, the one thing is and I don't want to speak for Coach Collins. Like, I don't know all the ins and outs of all that stuff, and I don't pretend to, but the one thing is it's one side of the ball. That's it's one side of the ball in special teams. It doesn't mean that they're not different. They are, but the change in terms of what they're asking, what they're recruiting to, is not as dramatic as obviously the offensive side of the ball. So I think they deserve a tremendous amount of credit for the way they've been creative and efficient on the offensive side of the ball as they go through the transition. So, and I know again, I don't want to pretend to speak on somebody else's program. I know there's there's probably a lot of things that he's done, that he's changed and all that sort of stuff. But, for that one side of the ball, it's pretty drastic as you could probably get. And I think they've done a great job of giving those guys a chance to have success and playing to their strengths in terms of their skill guys. And, the offensive linemen are blocking different than they probably ever have in terms of, everything from their stance to their techniques. And, they continue to get better every week. It's the kind of, you can watch the film and see them improve as the weeks go on, really everywhere on that side of the ball.
That last interception you guys had, Taiwan had the pressure and Dax had the pick. That's two guys earlier this year that maybe slow starts for various reasons. Taiwan with the injury, Dax
Right.
seemed like he was kind of hard on himself. But what have you seen out of those two lately? It seems like they've been maybe a little more productive.
Yeah, well, Taiwan feels better. That's the first thing. And, Dax is always hard on himself. But those guys continue to show up every single day and just continue to work on their craft and try and help this team. I think that's, Dax is playing on special teams, and, we all know that if we ask anything of him, he's going to give it his all. Taiwan continues to show up every day and work, and try to continue to improve. And I mean, that's the key to anything, is continuing to have the consistency to do it every single day, to give yourself a chance. It doesn't always come immediately. We don't know when it's going to come. We don't know in what form or fashion it's going to come, but kind of having that stick-to-itiveness every single day in practice is what those two have done, and they're getting to reap some of the benefits.
All right. I'll coach the student athletes tomorrow for y'all.